AI's high-stakes makeover, utilizing AI for personalized player engagement.
Welcome to what promises to be the most exciting and possibly most buzzword-filled panels of the day. Smarter, faster, fairer, using AI for personalized player engagement. Now, whether you're in real money gaming, free apps, or just wondering how Netflix knows you are sad before you do, then this is the panel for you. Today, we're going to dive into the AI. Isn't just slicing and dicing customer segments. It's reshaping how we engage players in real time with precision, privacy, and personality. Now, we got an amazing group of experts here, so we're going to start with introductions, and then we're going to get right to it. I'll start with myself. My name is TJ. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer for Kyrrex and Bitsby, which is one of the fastest growing copy trading platform. And over to you, Navneeth.
Hi, I'm Navneeth. I'm from Bangalore, India. I run on game tech and services company for the gaming industry, and been in the online space for the last 22 years. Worked with brands like Party Poker, now Entain, Rummy Circle. I had my own brands. From 2021, I ventured out into the services industry. So yeah, that's what me.
Hi, I'm Jack. I lead the APAC team at Optimove. Optimove are a CRM platform. We work with the likes of State.com, Entain, Flutter, essentially 70% of the EGR Power 50. And obviously, a lot of our system is built around AI, so hopefully we can share some insights today.
Perfect, thank you guys. Right, let's just kick it off with the million-dollar question then. So AI has done a decent job lumping us all into neat little boxes. But when do we move past, like the generic male 35, like-clicking stuff, and actually start engaging players as unique individuals? How do we go from basic segmentations to real-life personal mind reading without creeping anyone out, of course? Let's start with you, Jack.
So I think you can look at it in a number of different ways. Obviously, it's quite a broad topic, but you look at it from an operator perspective. I think the most important things from an operator is to understand very early on whether a player is going to be a low-value player or a high-value player. And from there, if you have a good AI tool, essentially, you can identify that via thousands of different microsegments. And so if you can understand that a player is going to be a low-value player, you're obviously going to assign bonuses or you're going to assign promotions to that player based on them being a low-value player. And also, if they're a VIP or a high-value player, you can understand that within the first, typically 48 to 72 hours via AI. You can then assign bonuses and the content to them to really personalize it from their perspective. Now, you can look at it from that way. You can also look at it from what you'd say a risk of churn perspective as well. So churn meaning that they may leave your platform or leave your site. With AI, you can essentially identify whether those players are going to be leaving your site as well. And when it comes to the personalization on that, you want to make sure that, for example, if you have a VIP player, that you don't want them to, essentially via the content in which you're giving them, you don't want them to leave your site. And so you can look at it in a number of different ways, from kind of content perspective, or you can look at it from a AI model perspective, or what the end goal is. So yeah, you can look at it in a number of different ways, to be fair.
Perfect. Anything from you, Navneeth, you'd like to add?
Yeah, so I'll just put it in a crux. So we're moving away from cohort-level advertising and personalization to a player-specific personalization, which means that earlier what we used to do, we used to cluster players and take decisions, give bonuses, give promotions at the cohort or the cluster level. But with AI personalization engines, I think we can personalize for the player on the device real time.
Perfect. Now, obviously, we're talking about personalization, and this one is for you, Navneeth. Now, everyone wants personalization until it starts to feel like the phone knows them better than the therapist. I mean, my AI was giving me dating advice, and now I'm ghosted in 5 different languages, believe it or not. So let's talk about Edge AI, and how can an on-device processing help us give players a tailored experience without setting all sorts of bells and whistles in privacy and GDPR and grandma's WhatsApp groups,
Right. So edge computing is, what we do is we have a product called Game Edge, and we use edge computing and AI and ML models to personalize on the fly. which also means that we are processing everything on the device and not sending it to the cloud, right? So we do not ask, or the player personal information does not leave your device, which means that it is compliant with GDPR and DPDP, which is Indian, right? So all the changes that, so what we do, we take AI models, personalize the application real time for the player at that moment. So we've been working on different data models. One of the data models is fraud control. The previous panel spoke in length, but one of our customers in India, what we did is they had a problem where when they have identified a player as a fraudulent player or a potential fraudulent player, they would block the account. It will take close to 1 to 2 weeks for them to identify whether or not a player is a fraudulent player or not. So what essentially is happening is they're losing a 15 days revenue on the player. So what we've done with edge computing is we've used the same data model, the AI model, to identify whether the player is walking on the fraudulent path. And when we've identified that, yes, he's walking on the fraudulent path, and the next possible move is that he's going to deposit money, take a bonus, go to the table, and do a chip dumping to other players, and then probably withdraw. So what we've done, we've identified that his next step is going to be bonus abuse chip dumping. So we've removed those tables where typically chip dumping happens from his lobby. So the potential of him doing fraud is that much lesser, right? And in edge computing also, what we do is we use federated learning, which means we are training AI models across devices, right? It's just not one device. We are training it across devices. And it also reduces the risk of any hacking because the data is not moved to the cloud.
So we can still be compliant and happy with the regulators and still keep the customer journey experience pretty smooth.
Correct. So
fantastic.
What's happening is we are just moving the data model, which is termed as business intelligence, and it's outside the GDPR purview.
Perfect. Anything from you, Jack?
No, I think you summed that up quite nicely, mate.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
All right. Now, implementing AI personalization sounds exciting until you realize it's not just plug and play. I mean, it's just plug, play, and patch things up for 3 months after that. So what do you think are the biggest challenges or facepalm moments for the operators when they're trying to implement AI? That's for you, Jack.
Well, to begin with, obviously, your data has to be extremely clean. I mean, you look at it from what we would call a batch data process or a real-time data process. So your batch data is typically data which is things like, first name, last name, the city that you're in, your date of birth, basically data that isn't going to change anytime soon. Whereas your real-time data around, depositing when you've won money, whatever it is, from an operator perspective, that needs to be absolutely clean. Because obviously, when it comes to personalization within AI, the data is only as good of basically where it's coming from. And so one of the biggest challenges is obviously making sure that data is clean. Then also from an implementation perspective, you're really looking at how you're, I suppose, segmenting that data, but making sure your attributes are aligned to whatever AI model that you're building or whatever AI model that you're using. And we see it quite a lot where if you haven't aligned your attributes, an attribute could be, very, very, very simple. It could be, full name versus first name, last name. Like that's quite an easy one. Or it could be deposit drop versus deposit amount. As long as that is clean, your implementation should be fine. Now, after that, it typically for any good AI model, it should take about 2 to 3 months to look at your historical data. And after that, you're essentially warming that up all the way. Now, the AI models that are being trained are usually on data which is across different regions, across different countries. You want to get to basically a place where the individualized data that you're getting can be trained on each individual, if that makes sense. And so, we see problems all the time that, you implement AI, you want to see results straight away. It doesn't happen that way. Typically, you do need about 2 to 3 months for it to warm up. And so you need to be patient, and then you need to make sure that the A/B testing and the models are working. So if you are implementing an AI model, if anyone says to you, oh, works straight away, I'd caution that. And I'd make sure that you have at least 2 to 3 months pretty much runway to any change management, any training from both a personal perspective right through to the actual AI model itself. You need to make sure that's working.
So do you guys also consider the LLMs while creating personalized workflows for players while against, I mean, if I'm trying to create a bonus promotion for a player, does it also check against what are the industry standards and all? Do we have something called as Gen AI or the LLMs which are running it?
Yeah, so again, I'm speaking this from a CRM perspective, so obviously it's quite focused on that. But most companies or most AI tools should have a benchmarking standard where you're referencing everything that you're doing against. Okay, so for example, in the Philippines, we know that the average deposit amount is super low. And so the individual AI benchmarking elements, whatever they're trained on, should be on those benchmarking tools of average deposit amount or average bet amount or first-time deposit rate. Whereas obviously if you're in the US or in the Western world, those numbers are going to be slightly higher. And so any AI tool should be taking into consideration what those benchmarking data is. Without that, you're basically just training it on historical data, which does work. But if you want to do it quickly, you need to have that benchmarking. And yes, so the elements are trained on that in instance, yeah.
And
right.
Jack, sorry, I got a follow-up question. Sorry, Navneeth there. So you mentioned obviously keeping the data clean. As in, can you maybe walk us through as in what you do to make sure the data is clean? Can we use AI for that?
Yeah, you can. You can use AI for anything. So yeah, but no.
Not for dating advice, personal experience.
Not for answering this question either. No, essentially, you do a lot of QA testing. So making sure that if you're warming up that data, that it's clean and that it works with the data structure that you're adhering to. So in any AI tool, you have your operation data, and then you have, well, it's more machine learning than AI, but we're not going to go into that. But then you have the segmentation and the attributions based on that data, and you're constantly testing it back and forth. Now, you could go a lot further than this and look at it from an outreach perspective. Obviously, you now have things like AI IP warm-ups for email, for web pushes, for app pushes. You make sure that if you have say an API or a web SDK or a file transfer, that is all remaining clean. And yeah, you need to be constantly testing it. Now, obviously, you have AI tools. I think Paul Graham at Y Combinator, for any of you know, Y Combinator actually just invested in an AI tool which actually data cleanses. But for the most part, you need to make sure that you're studying it from a human level as well, because although AI is great, I'm sure you've all asked ChatGPT some questions, especially when it comes to numbers and maths, and it normally gets it wrong. So you do need that human element to make sure that it's working, and making sure that when you're QA testing or data cleansing, that it all works succinctly between each other.
Perfect. Thanks, Jack. Navneeth, you wanted to say something.
Right. So we're talking about AI, we're talking about personalization, and one of the biggest fears that I have, I mean, the industry will walk towards it at some stage, is over-personalization for players, right? Not keeping in mind the behavior analysis or compulsive gambling, modules, right? So in my opinion, when you come up with a data model, you need to have people from different silos in the company, right? From the marketing, data science, to behavior, psychologists. It's very important because we don't want to keep selling, deposits or giving bonuses or introducing or creating compulsive gamblers. That's not what we want to do. We want to be very legit about it, and we want the right AI model to be, executed for.
No. I do agree, but I do think the AI models are only as good as the strategy behind it. So, I think typically for any operator, whether in the Philippines, whether in, we work with a lot of Filipino, a lot of Malaysian, a lot of Cambodian, Thai. well, basically throughout the whole of Asia. You know, a lot of the AI models are only trained as well as the strategy behind it. So well, I'll share some insights. So typically in any operator which we're working with anyway, you're kind of looking at 4 main strategies. One, especially in the Philippines, you want to identify using AI who your VIP players are very early on. So any good AI model should be able to identify whether a player is a low-value player or a high-value player within the first 48 hours. We know that typically 75% of your revenue will come from these VIP players. And that should really only account for about 10 to 15% of your overall players. So that's kind of the first strategy. So you need the AI models behind it to identify who the low-value players are, who the high-value players are. On that as well, you want to make sure that you're not wasting bonuses or promotions giving it away to low-value players. Again, that's AI coming into the front of it, making sure that if you can identify who's a low-value player versus a high-value player, obviously here in the Philippines, we know that we have a lot of players who are just betting 1 to 2 cents outside of Manila. And really, do you want to treat those players to bonuses and promotions? Not really, because you're not really creating financial efficiency. And so the AI models need to be trained to understand that low-value players aren't going to be assigned bonuses. And an AI tool also needs to understand that if you're assigning bonuses, that your CRM team or just your team in general as an operator can't do that manually. It all has to be succinct. And then, another strategy is making sure you're moving players from first to second to third to that magical 4th deposit number, where you're understanding that once a player gets the 4th deposit, the likelihood of them becoming a customer for life increases by about 50%. And so the AI needs to have that personalization involved that recognizes, I'm going to say it again, recognizes if they're a low-value player or a high-value player, recognizes what games they're playing, whether it's casino, whether it's sportsbook, whether it's bingo, whatever it is. Make sure the content of that is personalized. And again, that's done via an AI tool. And that is, whether they're speaking Mandarin, whether they're speaking English, whether they're speaking Thai. Any good AI system should be able to identify what language that person is speaking so that they can basically get that personalization via email, via web, whatever it is. And the next point is making sure that when you are identifying who they are, what channels they are on. If in the Philippines we see that, emails don't work too well, no one's really opening any emails. So it's really when people are coming on board to your website or to your app or whatever it may be, as soon as they go on, they want that experience. It doesn't matter if you're a startup, it doesn't matter if you're from, DigiPlus or you're from Entain, they want that same experience. So being able to identify when they do log on for an application or website, what games are they playing? Are they a sportsbook player? What language are they speaking? And luckily, we're in an age now where AI is taking it to such a front that all of this is really possible, whether you're a startup or whether you're, an enterprise company. So, basically making sure that that personalization is from every level, both from an operator standpoint right through to a player standpoint.
Amazing. That was really good. Thank you, guys. Obviously, the last one here. So now let's be honest, every AI model looks great in a PowerPoint slide, right? But when it first goes live, suddenly personalization looks like a casino ad at 2 in the morning when you're half drunk and stuff. So what KPIs or metrics do you think is more than that, you make sure that it's more than just a glorified casino ad to make sure it's working?
Did you say what metrics?
What metrics
to measure the AI. So,
just go with Navneeth.
Yeah, so we've looked at different metrics. What we used to look at from a cohort point of view in terms of revenues at D1, D7, D30 numbers. Now we started looking at all of those, the ARPUs, we started looking at all those data at the individual level rather than the cohort or cluster level, right? One of the measurable metrics that you want to know whether it's working fine or not is by just doing an A/B test, right? You can segregate or cluster players, and half of the players you can give them the AI model, and half of the players don't give them the AI model, and see how they're behaving, right? Look at the uplift of the revenues, look at the session time, look at the engagement metrics, just to gauge whether the AI model is working, the personalization is working, and then optimize it, tweak it, train it on multiple devices, multiple data sets, and then it will only keep improving as it progresses, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. Typically, with any AI model, you're basically looking back at 2 weeks to 4 weeks of data previously, and you're seeing what the actual results are versus the predictive results. Now, obviously, we're talking very broadly about what is AI. I mean, if we speak for an operator level, the kind of probably risk of churn is probably one of the main models that you want to identify. You know, whether a player is going to leave your app or leave your website in a number of days or a number of hours. Because obviously, if you can identify, especially from a VIP perspective, whether someone is a high risk of churn or low risk of churn, then you can stop them from leaving, which obviously, from a retention standpoint, saves you a lot of money, creates financial efficiency in everything you're doing. And so typically when you look back on how well that's worked, you're kind of doing it from 2 to 3 weeks before what the predicted risk of churn is versus the actual. And then you can also do it for future lifetime value. You can do it for customers who are most likely to make a deposit in the next 2 weeks. You should be able to segment that way versus AI as well. Obviously, we could go on for absolutely ever around every single AI prediction that you can make. But I think in iGaming, in what we're doing, probably risk of churn, future lifetime value, and most likely to make a deposit in the next 2 weeks, and then campaign efficiency are probably the 4 ones you want to train, and the 4 ones you want to look back over the past 2 weeks, 3 weeks of data and see what the actual results are versus the predicted results.
Perfect. Well, we got just about 4 minutes, and I think we got 4 questions from the audience here. So, Navneeth, I will start with you. How do you balance AI personalization with responsible gaming? Where is the ethical line?
All right. How do we do it is we have data models to identify the gameplay of the player. We have data models to identify the deposits, the whole behavior. And based on that, looking at the previous data, AI model is trained on previous data, right? So it also will identify and tell you who are the problem gamblers, and probably you can exclude them from the personalization engine that you have, just to ensure that you're not creating more problem gamblers.
Perfect. Jack, for you, can you provide an example of a successfully implemented personalized AI solution that worked well?
Yeah, I'll give you an example of Stake.com. So we work with Stake.com, obviously from the starting standpoint right through to where they are now, millions of users. Yeah, I'll share this. I think I'll be okay. I don't think I'm going to get in trouble. But anyway, so Stake.com.
Sign some NDA first, mate.
Yeah, I'll try and sum this up in less than a minute. Stake.com had a massive acquisition strategy for the Euro football, 2020, what is it, 2024, 2023? Anyway, what they identified was that high-risk, high-reward players, and this was done using AI, high-risk, high-reward players were most likely, from a sportsbook perspective, I'll go back a bit. So they had a massive acquisition drive, trying to get sportsbook players on board. Essentially what they wanted to do is move those sportsbook players over to online casino. Now typically in any iGaming company, if you can identify high-risk, high-reward players, as in players who are doing parlays or doing accumulators, where you're making multiple bets, those players, and also fantasy cricket in India, that is high risk, high reward as well. Those players, the propensity of moving them over to online casino is quite high. So they identified using AI a way of making sure that they found all the players in those different segmentations from, they're basically 18 to 25-year-olds. They then used AI to target them on the right channels, whether someone was opening an email, whether someone was opening an SMS, so that they didn't waste any money on any campaigns. And essentially, they had about a 60 to 70% response rate on all of that. So they managed to move a number of newly acquired sportsbook users over to online casino in a very financially efficient way. And that was all done using AI. And you can do that on a number of different ways, but I think that's one example anyway.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah. So one of the implementation that we've done in India for one of the real money gaming, which is poker and rummy. Again, can't name the client, but the problem statement was they wanted to increase the deposits of the players. So what did we do? We looked at historic information. They had their own AI model. So we tweaked the AI model. We understood what is the capacity of a player, how much can he deposit, when was the time then he can deposit. So if you're doing it in the second week of the month, we look at what is a typical deposit amount a player does, or that player does in the second week. And what we did is we clustered promotions, and we also clustered products or white goods based on his social signals, right? So when a player walked in, we looked at which page on the app is he spending more time in. We identified that, say, for example, a player is looking at a tournament, a particular tournament, right? So when he goes to the deposit page, what we do is we not only give him a 20% or a 30% bonus, but also give him the tournament tickets, because that's what he was looking at, right? Apart from that, we also look at, say, social signals. Say he's liked a lot of pages of travel, then we probably will tell him that if you deposit right now, you might get a one-way ticket to Bali, right? Or something like that. Gratification, immediate gratification is given to him, so his possibility of depositing increased quite drastically, and the operator also saw an uplift in the deposits of the players.
Perfect. Well, we're almost out of time. Well, we're actually out of time, so let's just pick the last one. How do you ensure your AI models stay effective across multiple markets with different player behaviors? Any one of you can take it.
It's a very, very, very broad question, but we can try and break it down. So I'll be as quick as possible because I know we're out of time. Essentially, you look at data sets within AI models. So whether it's sportsbook, online casino, bingo, you kind of name those ones. And the data set should be all succinct so that you can make sure that whether it's, I spoke about earlier, risk of churn model, for example, whether someone's logging in every day on online casino and depositing, if they don't log in one day and they don't deposit, obviously they're going to get a higher risk of churn score versus someone who plays poker once a month. An AI model that is good should be able to identify both and have a succinct data set for them and give them an individualized score. I think that's the quickest way I can answer that in zero time.
Thank you, Jack. And obviously, as we have no time left, we couldn't cover all of them, but feel free to grab the guys as we come. And thank you so much, everyone, for coming this afternoon. Thank you for the panelists for their advice.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you. I have to tell you, my mind is officially blown. That was such a great panel discussion. The obligatory photograph, thank you once again. And